Delighted to be joined now by Mike Neville. He's the former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector and joins us to talk about the absolute horror at the end of that Liverpool victory parade yesterday. Good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning, Julia. What a terrible, terrible incident. My thoughts and prayers go out to the people who are injured and their families.
Absolutely, and I think most people of the view it's a miracle that no one has died and people are still being treated in hospital. We know 47 hurt, 27 to hospital, 4 children were taken to hospital, and I think 1 child still remains in hospital. Absolutely horrific scenes. I just want to talk to you about, first of all, whether this could have been prevented. Now, a man has been arrested. He is the suspect. We understand he is the driver of the vehicle that ploughed into people. There are lots and lots of videos of this. What a lot of people can't work out is how a vehicle was able to get into the victory route in the first place, because surely these areas are all cordoned off and it's, this is a pedestrian area to all intents and purposes, apart from the victory parade bus with the Liverpool players on.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it, Julie? Because Liverpool is obviously a very, very successful football club. So these sort of parades are not an unusual feature of that city. And the parade is quite a long route. So all I can imagine is that there were staged road closures along the route. So you can't close every road in a big city like Liverpool for several hours while the bus is, say, 3 or 4 miles away. So I can only imagine that there was like a stage thing where every hour or whatever, every half hour, a different road was shut down. And something seems to have gone very, very badly wrong here, because the Times reported yesterday that the man was seen, the car was parked in that street. Yeah. He left a bar, got in that car, and drove towards the crowd. So it's just quite incredible, because normally when you see these parades and anything like demonstrations, the police will have coned off all the streets to say, there's no parking allowed here. So somehow, number one, a car has been allowed to park there the night before or that morning or whatever, sometime during the afternoon before the parade came by. And secondly, then it's been able to be driven into the crowd. There's really serious questions to be answered here.
Yeah, exactly. Now, although the police very early on ruled out that it was a terror attack, I think not unreasonable, given the spate of terror attacks we've seen not just in the UK, and I'm thinking, Westminster Bridge and elsewhere, but also in Europe, and plenty in Germany, in Nice, and others since then in France, of cars being used as the attack, basically the weapon in the terror attacks. People are instantly going to go, oh my gosh, is this a terror attack? And in those circumstances, they're likely to jump to the conclusion, like the likelihood that it would be an Islamist extremist attack. This would be also what the police would initially consider as a major line of inquiry. What did you make of the decision by the police to release very early information that a 53-year-old white British man from the Liverpool area had been arrested? Was that the right information to divulge to the public? Was it necessary to say he was white or that he was British? Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think it was absolutely the right decision. Now, there's all sorts of accusations on Twitter and the like that this is two-tier policing, and if he was anything else but white, they wouldn't have said something. I hope it's a different situation. I hope that the police have learned lessons here. If you remember the tragedy of Nicola Bulley, the lady who went missing in Lancashire, and there was all sorts of conspiracy theories came out there because the police didn't give information. Then we had the awfulness of Southport, which resulted in a void, which was then filled and resulted in riots in Merseyside. So let's hope that the police have learned that lesson and therefore get information out which can be used and show the public this is what has happened. So it does stop people reacting in a certain way, because as you've rightfully said, at first sight, people would have guessed this is an Islamic terrorist incident, just like we've seen in all those countries like Germany, as you've already related. And so I think hopefully the police have learned some lessons here. There's nothing that's going to impact on any trial by giving that information. Because, of course, you remember during the riots, the Prime Minister told us he couldn't tell us about the suspect, Axel Ruda-Cabana, because it would have prejudiced his trial, and then went on to condemn anybody involved in the rioting in disorder or tweeting as right-wing thugs. So you can disclose something, can't you?
Well, but again, the Merseyside Chief Constable later gave evidence to select committees and saying that she wanted to divulge more information about Axel Rudakabana at the time, but was prevented by the CPS. They have denied that. The Prime Minister himself said at the time that it was crucial that the information had to be withheld or risk collapse in the trial. I mean, I'm sorry, you're an ex-detective. I was a news reporter covering court cases. The information that... plenty more information would have been legally allowed to be given out that wouldn't remotely have created any contempt of court or prejudiced the trial. I think genuinely I think that's a lie, and I think that made the British public think that's a lie. Everyone's been telling me, other than calling me vile, the C word, bigot, you name it, when I prompted we can only speculate why the police chosen to give this information when they wouldn't in other circumstances, is that, well, it's because people like you are going to lead people to go out on the streets and riot, and, asylum seekers in hotels and hostels are going to get firebombed. But that isn't what the reports into the Southport riots actually says happened. There were a lot of yobbos and louts, and people were using this as an excuse. There were far-right accounts and dodgy accounts that were trying to stir stuff up. But it was the information vacuum. It was the view that people felt that they were not being given the full truth. That was the issue.
You're absolutely right. And as soon as the police or the authorities, the establishment, start to almost like not give information, people suspect there's a cover-up. And as I said, I can only hope this is the start of a new relationship between the press and the police. The police for the last 2 decades have really gone out their way to sort of antagonise the press and not give them information. That relationship they had with reporters, which could often help investigations and inquiries, was utterly lost. And I saw myself, a former commissioner. I brought a journalist in to do a good news story, and the commissioner had a fight with this guy. And I had to say, sir, this man's here to help us.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It encapsulated the rupture of the relationship that had occurred.
Oh, absolutely. But that said, I mean, look, let me just read you out some tweets from Merseyside Police just in the last month. Charged. Following an investigation involving Merseyside Police, US law enforcement, 3 people have been charged in relation to reporting a fabricated serious incidents. No mention of colour. Arrest. Detectives investigating a High Valley burglary last month have arrested a 53-year-old Walton man. No mention of skin colour or nationality. Breaking. We've charged a man with attempted murder after a stabbing in Kirby yesterday. No mention of skin colour. Arrest. 33-year-old man from Huyton has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. No mention of skin colour. We have charged a 20-year-old man after a converted blank cartridge firing pistol was recovered from a house. No mention of skin colour. I'm just saying, they chose to mention the skin colour in this incident only. It wasn't an appeal for witnesses. And then you give a description: tall man, white or black or whatever, clothing. The choice to mention his skin colour is different from other incidents where skin colour would not be mentioned. And we all know the differences. If he's white, this has got mentioned because they think that everyone else is a horrible bigot and is going to go and riot on the streets. And if he's black, they don't want people to know that, or Asian, because then people go and riot on the streets. This is a view that the police and the authorities have of the general public, which is despicable, isn't it?
It is despicable, and what it is that the establishment have had an experiment in multiculturalism which has failed, and now they're determined to sort of deal with anybody who challenges that. But I think in some of the incidents you mentioned, the sort of colour of skin is irrelevant here. Yeah. What gets me, Julie, is when you have somebody, we're looking for a rapist, and who's committed these wicked offences and ran off from a beach in, I don't know, Bournemouth, Blackpool, wherever else. And then there's no description.
Yeah, tell me what the person looks like.
At this point, you actually know what the person looks like because they haven't told you. And that's a bad one.
And that's where we come back to Southport. Let me just read you what Liverpool City Mayor Steve Rodham has said. He's been speaking at the scene of the accident. Apologies, don't mean the word incident. We have to be very careful, obviously, because someone is under arrest, the incident. He said, the question in the forefront of their minds, his mind, is why did a car end up in Water Street, which is where the car ended up. And that's for the police now to conclude their investigations. We'll find out the reason why it was there, as we were discussing earlier. Keir Starmer has issued a statement on camera, and he said it is a matter for the police that they gave details about the man who was arrested after the car ploughed into the crowd. He said, asked if he would like to see similar details released in the future in similar cases, the Prime Minister said that's a matter for the police, and the investigation is ongoing, so I think we need to leave that to them. I think today is a day really for thinking about all those impacted by this and being absolutely clear that we stand with them. What's your response to that, Mike Neville?
Well, it just simply shows the Prime Minister's hypocrisy, in my view, that he says one thing at one moment when it suits him and another when it doesn't. And we saw that during, as I've already said, during Southport, that he was able to say nothing about one type of suspect and everything about the other. And his words may well have impacted on their sentence, some of the people's sentences. And I'm surprised that people like Lucy Connolly, their lawyers haven't used that as an argument to say they received undue sentences because those in the highest positions were calling for them. And so weasel words is what I would describe.
Very interesting point. Mike Neville, really appreciate you joining us on, as I say, aftermath of that horrific day yesterday. Former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Quick word from Tom Slater.
I think it's just a reminder, isn't it, like what happens when the police lose so much public trust. I mean, so much of their behaviour has been informed by a desire to manage public reaction to attacks rather than dealing in an upfront way with the attacks themselves. It's always the assumption that there is a potentially explosive cohort of people out there who could go off if given the wrong information at the wrong time, too quickly, too slow, incomplete. And the problem is, even though in certain circumstances their decision might have made more sense, it's certainly an improvement on the slow drip feed that we got after Southport, you then get a whole range of questions because that fundamental trust is just no longer there. So that's the thing that needs to be rebuilt. And you can only do that in a way that feels genuinely impartial, that feels genuinely consistent, and it doesn't seem to be informed by their prejudices about the public rather than the supposed public prejudices. So that's something they really need to work on.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.